I began babysitting at 13 to earn extra money to spend on horribly embarrassing things like Fall Out Boy CDs. I would almost always work for my dad's clients, he's a lawyer, and get referred by word of mouth. I was babysitting for this one family who had a little girl, 9, and a little boy, 7. The parents seemed okay. They were kind of short-tempered, giving me a full schedule to follow and jokingly threatening me to beat any boy who might be mysteriously showing up after they left. It felt cruel for them to accuse me of knowing a boy, given I basically looked like an overgrown baby with frizzy hair at that age. Almost immediately after the parents leave, the little girl sings in a creepy high-pitched voice, "We're all alone now." "I know," the little boy chimed in, "let's play rape." Looking back now, I know the kid probably just heard the term on TV and knew the word was shocking and said it just for a reaction. I totally bought into it at the time, shuddering with wide eyes and changing the subject quickly. These kids were hell for the next hour. I wouldn't let them watch South Park on TV because their parents did not seem like the type that would allow their precious 7 and 9-year-old to watch a show like that. As soon as I said no, the little girl basically said, "Okay, that's fine. We'll just go play PlayStation in the living room. Feel free to watch it out here." Nope, I knew exactly where she was headed. I said you could watch any other TV show in the living room while I made them dinner. The parents had left instructions to make them sandwiches, nothing I couldn't handle. Before I had even gotten out the bread, I heard a massive crash. It seemed like the little girl had broken a glass. Annoyed and pissed, but I ultimately, with no way of punishing her, I cleaned it up while the two incredibly weird kids watched me with wide eyes. Dumping the broken glass into the trash, I went back to making sandwiches. I'm a vegetarian, so the kids had chicken. I made a simple salad one for myself. Just as I was finishing, the little boy screamed out of pain. I ran over to the couch in the living room to check on him. "My ankle," he cried, dramatically falling back into the couch. While I tried to figure out what had hurt his ankle, the little girl slipped out of the room. I was aware of this, but didn't really pay any mind to it, focused on the little boy pretending to be in pain. He kept saying, "I went to stand on it, but it hurt too much. I don't know why," over and over until his eye suddenly snapped to just behind me, where I could see the little girl standing with a protruding smile on her face. He was miraculously healed at this point. I was just thinking these kids were really weird, craved attention a little too much, and probably needed some more parental involvement. Whatever it was, I was 13 and the $60 was only 4 hours away. I set out the sandwiches for the two to eat at the dining table, went to get a soda and returned. After pouring soda for both of them, I realized that they hadn't taken a bite of their sandwiches yet. I asked them what they were waiting for. They smiled, "For you to take a bite of yours." I'm so glad I had the gut feeling to open the top part of the bread of my sandwich, because when I did, I saw glass, broken glass that I put in the trash. I stared in horror at the two little kids staring right at me with menacing grins. I lost it, shouting, "Are you serious? At the very least, I could have really injured my mouth. What's wrong with you two?" Instead of crying or apologizing or pretending to be ashamed or confused, these little two fuckers began laughing. Not like kids. It was too low. It wasn't that silly free laugh kid laugh. It was low and threatening. I never forget that noise. My immediate reaction was, these kids are too young to be laughing like that. I called my older sister, 17 at the time, cried about what had happened, and she came and took over for me. We left the house with chills after the parents arrived. I never babysat for those two again. What I can't get past is the level of premeditation that went into sprinkling the broken glass in my sandwich, and the totally remorseless way they responded to me getting upset. They were unlike any two kids I've ever met before. A few years ago, after my dad got a big promotion from work, my family moved to the suburbs in a much nicer area of town that we had lived in before. We were all extremely happy with the move, and our quality of life went way up. I was 15 back then and eager to make some money for myself. I was getting my driver's license soon, and if I was going to enjoy my freedom to the fullest, I was of course going to need money. So I set out to sweet talk all the neighborhood families, mentioning all of my babysitting I have done in my old neighborhood. I had never done any babysitting before, but I figured that they didn't have to know that. Before long, my Friday and Saturday nights were booked solid with babysitting jobs that brought in ridiculous amounts of money for very little work. I typically only had to take care of one or two kids for a couple of hours, and I put them to bed and quickly became comfortable with my duties. Most of the jobs were boring, but the Miller's kids were always a chore to take care of. The Millers lived in the house directly beside us, and they had identical twin boys that were both nightmares to keep watch of. The names were Jack and Michael. Jack was a quiet boy, and he was always my favorite between the pair. Michael, on the other hand, was hyperactive and constantly loud. He liked to boss Jack around, and on more than one occasion, I would leave to get a snack ready for the boys or use the bathroom only to come back to Michael trying to beat Jack senseless on the floor. I never thought anything of it. Boys will be boys. But there's always something about the way that Jack interacted with Michael that was off-putting to me. He would cower from him sometimes and shut his eyes. When he did this, Michael would lean down and whisper in his ear. I could never make out what Michael was trying to say, and one time I tried to lean in to listen. Michael snapped his head up and stared at me, clearly angry that I was trying to listen. He was just a 5-year-old boy, but something about him gave me the creeps. Jack will talk to him though, and sometimes they seem to get along well. Always at the end of the night, Jack would beg me not to tell his parents about anything bad that Michael did. A few times I told him that I had enough and I was going to tell them anyways, but the look of fear in his eyes after I said that always kept me from doing it. At the end of the night, his parents would go up to the room that the boys shared, check on them, then come back down to pay me. Then I would leave. I probably did this about 12 times for the Millers. A year ago, after a particularly bad night of Michael behaving horribly and tormenting Jack, I decided it was finally time to tell his parents about it. I put the boys to bed and decided not to mention my plans to Jack. When the boys' parents came home, I told them right away. The look on their faces when I mentioned Michael's behavior made me instantly regret mentioning anything. They paid me without saying a word, and Mr. Miller asked me to leave. He said that they appreciated all the times they babysat for them, but to not expect any more phone calls from them. I walked out of the house stunned. I had no idea what would make them act like that. The next weekend, I was at another neighborhood house, the Howards, to babysit, and asked them if there was any reason that trying to talk to the Millers about Michael would bother them. I sat horrified as Miss Howard told me the story about how 3 years ago, Michael had gotten hit and killed by a car after running into the road right in front of their house. I didn't know how to explain what I saw many times at the Millers, but needless to say, I quit babysitting jobs after that. I was babysitting for a new neighbor. She was a single mom from the East Coast, moved from Indianapolis. I was a 6th grader at the time, and all I had to do was sit in the house and do my math homework while she was out on a date. Her 2-year-old baby was sleeping in his crib. Everything in the house was quiet, and the night was going great. At around 9 p.m., I get a call and answer. It's some man who only asks, "Who are you?" I answered, "I'm the babysitter." He then starts asking all these questions about where the mom is and who I am personally. I get scared and hang up and call the mom to let her know. The guy calls back and then starts to say the address where I am, then asks if the baby's okay. I said yes, he's fine. Then he responded with, "How can you be so sure when he's that close to the window?" To which I just go, I'm just a babysitter and I'm trying really hard on my math homework and I'm really scared. I basically had a mental breakdown. 10 minutes later, the mom shows up and explains that her ex-husband had found her. She hands me a wad of cash and excuses me. I don't know if the guy was in the bushes or just calling from Massachusetts or what. To this day, I'm too scared to babysit again.